Following 30 years of socialistic, communistic policies and economic practices by the ANC, year after year, when you actually look at the data, realizing that it does not amount to any form of economic growth whatsoever. You'll note that when you look at this first graph, the one at the top, 1994 happens, and you'll see that there's significant growth right up until 2007, between South Africa not growing quite as much as the upper middle income, but that's usually very good. Upper middle income suggests that there's more people moving into the upper middle class, and also people in the upper middle class are starting to make a little bit more money. They're starting to maybe start businesses. They're starting to grow. Now, it should be noted here that the ANC didn't suddenly, under Zuma, start talking BE or affirmative action or employment equity. That started already in 1994. The first sort of BE program, affirmative action, was started under Nelson Mandela, and it was expanded under Thabo Mbeki. uh, I think BE was actually started under Thabo Mbeki himself. Now, while neither employment equity, affirmative action, or BE is good for an economy, what Thabo Mbeki and Nelson Mandela got right is everything else, right? So while, yes, they had these BE compliances that they required and employment equity and affirmative action, they did everything else right. There was electricity for everything to work, although 1998 we already had warnings that that wasn't going to continue. They didn't spend more money than what they could absolutely afford. In fact, we had a surplus under Thabo Mbeki. They managed the economy relatively well. They allowed business to be business and to grow. And yes, they asked business to, hey, spread that wealth around, and business was more than happy to comply. Then the Jacob Zuma era starts, and you will note when you actually look at it, you see that in 2008, South Africa is on a sharp decline, but it already starts in 2007. Look at the chart closely. 2007, you already see a major dip. Why is this? Because this is the year that Thabo Mbeki is pushed out. Now, investors aren't sure, business people aren't sure what's going to happen next. Jacob Zuma takes over, and for the first 2 years of Jacob Zuma's presidency, we can't really blame him for the mistakes that happened in South Africa. You had a worldwide economic crash. It should be noted, though, that South Africa did not suffer that much under that crash, and the reason for it was once again good decisions made by Thabo Mbeki when they forced banks to be careful with the kind of loans that they make. If you'll, those of you that has ever taken out a loan at the bank will know, the Banking Act in South Africa restricts the amount of money that a bank can lend to any individual person. No other country in the world had this program. And so a lot of other countries found that they had a lot of people completely over leveraged in 2007, 2008, 2009, and they had severe financial crashes. But from 2010 onward, when the rest of the world was coming out of their financial difficulties, this is where we can start to judge the actual results of the new dispensation under Jacob Zuma. And what we see is the economy never recovers to its previous levels. Instead, it recovers to about half of its previous level and then starts to slowly decline. If you look at the bottom one there, the real GDP per capita, you'll think, well, it's kind of higher than what it was in 1994, but that's only true if you don't factor in the devaluation of the rand as well as the weakening of the economy. And then more importantly, if you don't even look at the unemployment rates in South Africa, where again, you will see that unemployment quite high in 1991 at about 23%. By 1994, it's down to 22.94%. Then we go on a steady decline. Yes, there's some years where it's slightly up, but you can see the trend. It's starting to trend downwards. The ANC and Thabo Mbeki, they're making the right decisions. They're doing the right things. They're putting the right macroeconomic practices in place that allow for business to expand. And as business expands, it needs to hire more people into the workforce, less unemployment. And then we see 2008, Jacob Zuma, financial crisis, and it spikes to 23.52%. That's not too bad because remember, we were at 23.26%. So it's not terrible. We can still, oh, never mind. 2010, we're up to 24%. Then we're slightly down, slightly down, slightly down, and then we start climbing. From about 2015, we start to see the actual results of the Jacob Zuma presidency. Because remember, under Thabo Mbeki and Nelson Mandela, affirmative action, employment equity, and BEE was implemented. But at the time, all of these were mostly opt in. You didn't have to be BE compliant, but if you were, there would be some perks. So businesses were really incentivized to be BE compliant. It was under Jacob Zuma where BE was expanded into broad-based Black economic empowerment, and where it went from being sort of compliant-based, or you could just decide not to being compulsory for certain companies. And then, of course, under Cyril Ramaphosa from about 2016, we start to see, or from about 2016, still Jacob Zuma, but here is where we start to see massive unemployment. So 2018, I believe, is when Ramaphosa takes over from Jacob Zuma, and we see a giant spike in unemployment. And one of the reasons for it is Ramaphosa is, if Jacob Zuma was the BE president, Ramaphosa is the champion of BE. Like, this man has expanded BE, and now even more so. Just last year, there was an announcement that BE would now change. Instead of it being a program where companies can only do business with the government if they are BE compliant, it would now be based on the minister, and the minister would be able to set targets for all businesses in every individual sector. And the sectors will be determined by the minister. So the minister could look at the mining sector and say that the mining sector needs to have 95% Black. That's it. That's the goal. If you don't reach it, you can be fined up to 10,000 Rand, I believe, a day or a month, or a percentage of your profits. So they can really hurt you if you don't comply. So it doesn't even matter. Even if you're not doing business with the government, the minister can just enforce it. So Sakeliga and the National Employers Association of South Africa, or NISA, they took the minister to court. They applied at the High Court for an urgent application to dismiss the employment equity targets set by the government, because they understood it has not worked. In over 30 years, BEE and employment equity has not delivered a better life for ordinary South Africans. The government has not realized this. And yesterday, we found out that the High Court of South Africa dismissed the application. Now, it should be mentioned here, the High Court of South Africa isn't dismissing this because they're taking the side of employment equity or they like employment equity. I don't think they care. Right? From their perspective, they're only looking at the legalese. And what they found effectively is the minister followed all of the rules as laid out in the Constitution. None of the steps taken by the minister breaks the Constitution in such a way that the High Court can get involved, because there is a separation of powers. The High Court is not a body that makes laws. It is simply a body that enforces laws. And so they can't do anything. They can only do something if some employers start to overstep the lines or start to break the Constitution or start to trample on human rights. But other than that, they have to just say, no, you can't do anything about it. So effectively what this means for ordinary South Africans, we're going again. The government is now going to force all companies, whether they do business with the government or not, to reach certain employment equity targets. If they cannot reach it, the government will tax them into oblivion, either until they go bankrupt or until they start to comply. This will lead to even more unemployment. It will lead to more businesses leaving the country. It will lead to even slower business growth. And the reason for it is all companies currently targeted by the minister are companies with over 50 employees. This means that if you're a company that operates in a sector that knows you will not be able to reach those targets, either because there's just not enough people to actually fill those positions, or at least enough educated people to fill those positions, you will just refuse to grow anymore. So let's say that you could have grown and gone from 50 to 100 people. You're instead going to say, I'm not going to grow anymore. So 50 people will not get a job. and the economy will simply not grow any further. That is literally how most businesses will now just respond to this. So the ANC is actively destroying growth in the name of racism and what they call equity. Let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about all of this. That's the story as it stands right now. I will, of course, update you as soon as we know exactly what's going to happen and how this is going to happen, because this new bill gives the minister incredible powers, and the minister could absolutely abuse this to his or her heart's content. But let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. As always, a massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons and the YouTube channel members. If you want to become a patron or a YouTube channel member, just hit the link in the description down below or click the join button right below this video. Then, if you want to help me succeed and you want to help this channel grow and you think more people should have access to the content that I make, please consider hitting the like button, hitting that subscribe button, and leaving a comment, because it really does help. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your support. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Have a lovely weekend, and I'll see all of you in the next one. Peace.